Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And this podcast, Blake and I are going to talk about the Four Nations Faceoff. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, the pal from a different locale, Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
I'll always be your pal, my man. Yeah, friends forever. That's confirmed. I'm doing well, my man. Busy day at work today, but this is what I live for. This is what got me through the last couple hours of work, just counting the minutes down until I can see my buddy NGN. And I'm excited to get into this with you, man. Yeah, we were both talking offline here a little bit, but this is going to be an interesting episode, something that we don't normally do, and we get to talk just a little bit more regular hockey, which is something that you and I love to do privately, but it's fun to do it on the podcast too, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about this tournament in
Yeah,
general.
me
I
too.
think it's going to be pretty interesting. I've been saying, like, every time Elliot Friedman gets on the 32 Thoughts, he's just like getting me jacked up about how the players are super excited for this tournament. A lot of them, it'll be the first time, maybe some of them played World Juniors or something, but as a professional
Yeah.
to put on their country's jersey and represent their country. So I think it'll actually be pretty intense and there'll be a lot on the line. The guys won't want to go home with just a silver or just a bronze. There'll be some animosity out there, I feel like. Before we get into it though, Blake, I wanted to ask, how's your week been? We're going into I released the waiver wire pod, did that solo, just because it's obviously a weird week with this big long break and the matchup in Yahoo is 3 weeks long. But how'd your week 18 go? How are we sitting going into the break here?
It's good. It was a weird week. I think, we could notice this in the Discord as well. The first 3 days, everybody was like, what the hell is happening? Is
Yeah.
anybody out there on the ice right now? Is anybody shooting? Is anybody blocking? Anybody scoring? It was a garbage start. So not what you want to see. And I think those type of weeks, if I would have had that like 2 years ago or something like that, I would have been blowing things up. I would have been making ads like crazy, like,
Mhm.
oh, I got to get a games played advantage, but kind of just waited it out. And in the leagues that I really care about, Cupful, I was able to take the dub there. Our listener league, I was able to squeak one out, and I won in our experts league too, which is pretty damn nice. So, it was a good week. I did lose my cats leagues, which I don't know, that kind of stinks, but just with this kind of start, I was happy where I landed. And buddy, I really appreciated that cross the stream story. I mean, that right there, do you ever get like, when you get emotional, like you get misty, right? But only you
Mhm.
just get that single tear and it's just hanging there on the eyelid. And then you have to like intentionally blink and then it comes down and then you have to look around to make sure that people see you, right?
Mhm.
That
Yep.
you're a sensitive, emotional man.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's what happened when I heard you retelling the story of the first time we crossed the streams. That's emboldened into my memory. So thank you very much for that, my man.
Yep, I had to do it.
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
to carry on the tradition. It had to be done. Yeah, I had to concede my experts league. We were against each other this week in the experts, and
Oh,
I
were
think
we?
we were.
Oh,
I
I
didn't
didn't know.
actually.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, you didn't even
I wasn't
notice.
sure. I
Oh,
was just
right.
playing. I was just playing for points, honestly.
Yeah, it's not like we were texting back and forth all week at all. I'm pretty sure I didn't actually check at the end of the week, but I'm pretty sure we were number one and number two in points for. Yeah. So I can't really fault my team, but your team absolutely went off. Huge week for
Expert
your
level,
guys.
right here, right, Nate? Are we got synergy on
Expert
that? Yeah,
level.
true
Uh,
experts.
yeah, Dylan Gunther, the guy that I dropped early on in the season. Yeah, that one's coming back to bite me in this matchup. He might have actually been the entire margin of difference between our two teams. There's a what is this? 39 points difference, and Gunther got their 41.5 points on the week. So yeah,
Dear
uh,
God. No, you know
Gunther,
what the
the
real
entire
difference
reason I
was,
lost.
Nate? Ryan Donato. All right. Just give me
This
a
is
hell
true.
yeah, our listeners who streamed Ryan Donato for the week. Thank you.
That's
Well
wild.
done, kings and queens. Okay. Excellent work.
That is pretty wild. 3 straight games where he just absolutely goes off. Goal and then assist, 4 shots. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 shots. Goal, 6 shots. That's insane work from
Yeah,
Ryan
yeah.
Donato.
Minutes going
Um,
up too. I love that.
Yeah, there could be something there at least for a little while. It kind of sucks for him that they're going into a break now, like just when he's getting hot, right? But yeah, might be something worth looking out for. For myself, it was a big week. I took this L here, but couldn't be mad at the team. Won in fantasy puck league, so I'm maintaining my buy spot there. And in Kikuffle, I won. And Nimmer, shout out Nimmer, in
Legend.
tier one. He's been leading this league from basically from the opening gate. But I finally overtook him this week. He finally took an L, and I got another W. So I finally got him this week. I'm sure it'll be down to the wire. We still got weeks to go here, but yeah, it feels good to be on top of the heap in tier one for sure. And yeah, without further ado, Blake, I think we should get
What
into
a
what we came
beautiful
here for.
segue right there. Oh yeah,
That's one of my best for sure.
that's not
Uh,
bad. Yeah.
let's get into it. Let's just talk about the format of the tournament here. The Four Nations Face-Off is what they're calling it. I'm not. Let's start there, Blake. Four Nations Face-Off. I feel like this is a swing and a miss on the name.
Yeah.
Like Four
We're missing a
Nations
word.
something else. Yeah. Like what are we missing here? Can we workshop this live?
Four Nations Face Off. That just reminds me of that Nicolas Cage movie. You know what I mean? Where then John Travolta, Face Off. You ever see it?
No.
God, this is what we call a conversation killer. Immediately, all right, they literally take their faces off and put it on the other person's face, and they become another person. So that would be a different kind of tournament, folks. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Four Nations Face Off. Yeah, we're missing something. Like it's got to.
Yeah.
I like the Four Nations tournament, the Four Nations Cup.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you got? Like, I got to noodle this.
Yeah, something like that. It's got to be it's got to be like about the prize at the end or something, right? Like everybody knows the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like that's what it's about, right? Like there's nothing about like what's on the line here. I feel like you got to
Yeah.
work that into the title somehow.
Is it like a verb? Four Nations Face Off, right? Or is it Four
Oh,
Nations Face Off? And then you're like,
that is a good
I
question.
don't mind the verb actually. If it's a verb, like Four Nations Face Off for supremacy, I don't even know.
Supremacy.
Yeah, that's now I'm losing it. I lost it. Yeah, I'm very tired, folks. Yeah, but it's a
There's
verb. I don't mind the verb.
All right. Well, comments on the video or on the podcast, wherever you're listening or watching, tell us what you would rename this tournament to give it a little bit more panache. But basically, it's a pretty straightforward format, right? It's a 3 round robin games. And then whoever the top two teams are in terms of record at the end of that, they play in a championship game, and that's it. So it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing too much to dissect in terms of the format. Obviously, all 4 teams play each other once, and then whichever 2 teams have the best record play in a final game for something, pride, I guess, for the final face-off,
They
I
face
guess.
off for question mark. Like, we don't know, but that's fine.
That's exactly what they'll be doing. So we're going to dig in through the rosters here because I do think there's some pretty interesting conversations to be had about
Mhm.
these rosters and the decisions that were made. So let's dig in here. Let's start with Finland. I think Finland is kind of the I don't know, the stepchild of this particular tournament in a lot of ways, and it's no
They're
slight to
just
them.
happy
They
to
got
be
some
here.
great players, for sure, but definitely the depth is going to be where you see a difference between Finland and some of the other nations here. I've got on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got the Athletic when they kind of did the initial rosters. So some of these players have been replaced due to injury or things like that. We'll kind of walk through it a little bit here, but want to get your take, Blake. First off, like I had to look up who the coaches are. Antti Pennanen
I'm
and the
glad you did.
assistant coach is Tuomo Ruutu, who I do know. That's a name that's played in the NHL before, so I knew that name. But yeah, it's definitely not a spot where you've got a coach that you recognize from their time behind an NHL bench, eh?
Yeah, I didn't. I'm like I was saying. I'm glad you did that because that's news to me, man. I don't know. Actually, oh, I'm drawing a blank on the man's name. He used to play for Florida, but there was a recent video that was going around on X. It was like this Finnish. He used to be a player. He played for Florida. Oli Jokinen.
Olli Jokinen. Yep.
Yeah, he was like pumping up the team. Why the
Yeah.
hell do they not have this man here behind the bench at the very least, just as like a morale boost? That guy, you run through a wall for that man.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. I didn't put that together. Yeah, that would have been great. A missed opportunity
I
there
think
for
so.
sure. So I wanted to talk through a few of these players here. So like no offense to these players, obviously, we might say that a few times tonight, but Joel Armia, Eetu Luostarinen, and Eric Halla are on this roster, and you're missing a few guys. Kotkaniemi has had a nice year. Um,
Oh,
Yuli Tolvanen and Matthias Michelli, I think, are three names that I would put up for debate here, Blake. If we have to put three roster spots towards these six names, what's your initial take? What do you think we're going for here? And we can talk a little bit about like the role they're playing on this team. Like obviously this team has a few guys who can score and they probably have, their top power play set and they've got stuff like that figured out. So maybe they are, intentionally targeting a different brand of player to penalty kill or to play a fourth line energy kind of role. But it does feel to me like they could have gotten a little bit of a different way here. What do you think?
yeah. I mean, they definitely could have. Those names you mentioned are definitely better offensive pieces. The jury's out. I think Finland knows they're kind of behind the eight ball here in terms of talent. So I think they have to play to their strength, and their strength might be kind of grinding teams down and clogging things up and being opportunistic, right? Like they have, a good top six, a reasonable top six for sure. But a guy like Joel Armia, he's a great penalty killer, right? Like that's what he's in here to do, like that energy role. And something that's going to be interesting to watch about this tournament is how these teams at the top, like Canada, US, how are they constructing their lines, right? And there is so much strength and offensive strength in the players that both those teams have brought, and we'll talk about them in a bit. But I feel like it might be an advantage for Finland to have guys like Joel Armia and others here that can maybe play a role in this team. So it's not as egregious as some of the other snubs that we'll talk about in a little bit. I'll say that.
Yeah. I think for myself, like, I mean, I was trying to look up here just to see, like, Luosterainen plays for a good team. So do his underlying numbers look better than they might on a different team? I don't know. On the season, he's got almost a 53% Corsi for percentage. That's a pretty good number, 52.2% on
Yep.
a scoring chance for percentage. This is at 5v5. But yeah, you do kind of wonder, is that just because he plays for Florida or is there something more there? That's a valid concern. Armia at 48, Corsi for percentage, and 47 scoring chance for percentage. Yeah, it's a little bit up for debate for sure. I think for myself, though, I'd want to find a way to get Tolvanen in there.
Mm.
I just think like in a tournament where like one shot can decide, you can sneak out a win by one shot. Like Tolvanen is that guy that has that shot, right? I don't know. To me, there's something there just to have that guy in your lineup. I can understand if you're trying to go like the utility route with some of these guys and leave off a guy like Michelli or leave off a guy like Kakanyemi who are a little bit less of that kind of role on a team. So I can understand the appeal of the Armia, the Luostarinen, and the Hala in that regard. But I feel like at least a guy like Tolvanen, I want to see him on this lineup somewhere because he can play 8 minutes in a game and then just come over the boards at the right time, get that one opportunity in the slot and just bury it. And that's not something I'm sure of with the other guys.
Yeah, no, you're right. He brings more to the table, plus sandpaper, right? He's a gritty guy, big time beefer, and he can do that as well, and certainly would fit in like the middle six, even the fourth line. You can throw a Tolvanen, and he's going to probably do something for you with that elite shot, as you mentioned.
Yeah. All right. On the defense, this is a really tough spot, honestly, for Finland. Like, they were not the deepest team, as we mentioned already, and they've lost three defensemen off the original roster. Miro Heiskanen, obviously the biggest name, that's not going to be able to play for them, but also Jani Hakanpää and Rasmus Ristolainen, who were named to this team originally. So, Henry Jokiharju and I forget his first name. I think it's Urho Vakanainen
Yep.
and
Nice.
Matt and Paulo from Ottawa, who's played 18 games this year, 5 games last year. Like, I honestly didn't know this guy existed until they named him to Finland's roster.
He's the
Maybe,
coach's son.
yeah, maybe. Um, but yeah, this is definitely a spot where you can't be, overly excited. Without Heiskanen, like, I really don't even know who's going to run a power play there. Like, right now, the defense is Lindell, Mikkola, Valimaki, Mata, and then yeah, Yokoharu, Vakanainen, and Manpalo. So I don't really know who runs a power play from there. Maybe they do some kind of five forward thing. That wouldn't be the worst idea, just considering who they've got back there. I don't know. You got any thoughts on what that power play might look like?
It's it's not inspiring, that's for sure. I know that the juice box use of Alamaki, he did that in Arizona for a little
Hmm.
bit when Chikrin was injured. So he's capable of running a power play one, but I mean, obviously, it's not going to be defense heavy, right? They're going to be focusing on getting the puck down low with guys like Barkov and Aho and really cycling down there. It's not going to be a big part of that power play. Essa Lindell plays power play too sometimes in Dallas, so I think he can maybe step in there, but it's slim pickings. I don't think they'll go with five forwards. That would surprise me, but yeah, I think it's probably going to be Valimaki and then Lindell.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense to me as well. In goal, they've got UC Saros, Kevin Lankinen, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, definitely a strength of this team.
Yeah,
Even if one of them falters in game one and they decide to go to another one, they've got three very legitimate options, each of whom I feel like could steal a game at some point. And it wouldn't be surprising in a short tournament like this for one of them to just get hot and absolutely rob some teams. So that's definitely a strength for this team. I haven't looked honestly at what Saros has been doing as of late. I know Nashville has still been struggling to figure things out on a night in, night out basis. Yeah, it wasn't great. Oh yeah, the 6-2 loss
it's
to
bad, dude.
Chicago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this does not look good. Like, what do you think? Do they start Saros just based on acumen, or are they going to go like Lankinen? Lankinen, is he the starting goalie for Finland?
I kind of doubt it. I just feel like Saros has enough, name cachet or
And you're
whatever you want to call it, pedigree at this point. But yeah, if you are, it is a valid question, right? Like I do think it's a valid question, and yeah, I mean, you get the guys in for a few days of practice, and you decide that Lankinen's looking the best. Like I wouldn't fault anyone for making that decision in a four-game tournament.
yeah,
I mean, you know how I feel about goalies in general. Like
yeah.
I'm gonna
Just go
take
with
the
the hot
guy who
hand.
gives me the best chance at winning on the first night and take it from there. So, yeah, I wouldn't fault them for making any kind of decision in goal. Let's move over to Sweden here.
Actually, before we do
Sweden,
that, Nate, one thing
yeah.
I did want to just I would like to pick your brain about just in terms of how do you think Finland's going to play? Like, and
Hmm.
I'm looking at this team, and I'm looking at, there are a lot of Florida Panthers here, and I know that the Florida Panthers are big time dump and chase. Like that's what they
Hmm.
do. They dump it in, they forecheck. And when a team is not as talented offensively like Finland is, what do you think? Like, I don't think they have the horses to kind of go back and forth with rush chances. Like, I
Right.
see Finland sort of clogging it up a little bit and doing that kind of grindy forecheck style and maybe create some chaos in the offensive zone and capitalize on their chances. I mean, is that sort of how you see it as well?
Yeah,
I don't know these coaches, but
I definitely think they'd be wise to go that route. They it is kind of a weird makeup because they don't have like a lot of, you know, big bodies to go banging in the corners either in this forward group. So it's not like they can dump it in and then go, knock some guys around. That's probably not what they're going to do either. That being said, they do have a lot of guys who have really strong two-way games, right? Like down the middle, Barkov, Aho, Hintz, Lundell, like talk about two-way players. You
yep.
got that in spades right down the middle. Granlund, Lehkonen on the outside, Rantanen on the other side. Like you've got guys who can play in both directions on this squad for sure. And so I think they will probably try to, play a little bit of a limited game, try to, you know, keep everything to the outside and play that. Yeah, probably a dump and chase style would behoove them the best. You don't want to get into a track meet with McKinnon and McDavid and these guys. So I think that would make a lot of sense to me, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what tactics are chosen by specifically Finland, just because on
Yep.
paper they are the team with the least amount of skill. All right, let's move over to Sweden then. Over here, we've got head coach Sam Hallam Now, Hallam is actually like contractually Sweden's head coach. Like he is Sweden's head coach for all international purposes. So that's like a real job that they just hold constantly,
Nice.
and that's what his role is for Team Sweden. So it's an interesting piece, I think, honestly, because he like literally is only concerned with this, and that's like he's been on the drawing board thinking about this and this alone for the last, I don't know, probably number of years at this point, right?
Yep.
You got Daniel Alfredson going to be on the bench with them as well, which is a cool piece. Obviously, longtime NHLer, Hall of Fame caliber player. So I think it's actually an interesting thing to think through. Is that actually like kind of a significant advantage in some respects that you have a coach here who's not like saddled with anything other than making this specific team be as good as it possibly can be for 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, I think so. And he doesn't like he's not an NHL coach, so he doesn't have something else he's thinking about really.
Hmm.
He's really probably been focusing on this for a little while now, right? And how to get the best out of his players and also his roster construction. So yeah, I do think in a short tournament like this, that can be a benefit.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting piece. I think he has definitely thought through who these players are and how to get the best out of them, the lineups, the potential, line combinations. I think he's definitely probably. If he's not a step ahead of the game, then that's a problem, basically,
Yeah.
at this
Yeah,
point.
really.
So yeah, I think there's a few interesting choices that were made. One that I saw bandied around online, Oliver Ekman Larson not being invited, Rasmus Anderson being invited. I think probably that had something to do with Rasmus Anderson having a really hot start at the beginning of the year. I could see the argument for either. I don't think it's a make or break decision. Sweden has a lot of good defensemen here, so you're really talking about a seventh defenseman anyway. So I don't have a big problem with it going either way. Who would you have taken between the two?
Um, Yeah, I think I'm happy with kind of how they did it here. Like Ekman Larson to me, I'm not too interested. Like, although he has been like, have you enjoyed what he's been bringing to the table for the Leafs there? Because I remember when he was with Vancouver, it just, he was like a pylon out there, and I think there were some injury concerns there as well. But I mean, from what you've seen so far on the Leafs, like, is he the right guy for this kind of position? Like, I think one of the things that Sweden's looking to do is make sure that they're pretty sound defensively, and I don't really know that that's one of OEL's strengths.
Yeah, OEL's been strong. I think it's been hard to tell, I think, a little bit, honestly, because I think he's more sheltered in Toronto than he has been in any of his more recent stops. He spent some time with McCabe, he spent some time with Tanev. These are guys that can definitely shelter you and make you look good even when you're not playing particularly well. And they kind of rotate the top four a lot in Toronto. Like they don't have like a true top pair. So yeah, you can kind of get yourself into better situations in a lot of cases in that
Mhm.
way.
Yep.
Um, OEL does have good underlying stats like the Corsi for percentage, the scoring chance for percentage at even strength, both solidly above 50%. But yeah, is that a little bit just a function of where he's at on a team that does a pretty good job of pushing chances in the right direction? That's definitely up for debate. So I don't have a huge problem with it here. Um, I guess the only thing you could say is that OEL is a guy that, as a seventh defenseman, you can plug him in literally anywhere and that you know what you're going to get, right? Veteran defenseman, you know exactly what you're going to get. And so maybe you could say that that's more valuable to you, but yeah, like I said, not something I'd be, it's not going to make or break the tournament, I don't think, in any regard. Um, Up front, there are a few more interesting decisions made. Mikael Backlund and William Eklund were left off this squad. William Karlsson, Gustav Nyquist, Victor Arvidsson, Leo Carlsson, all invited. So I think those are some interesting decisions. I think specifically William Eklund not being invited and Leo Carlsson being invited. Again, these decisions were made in advance earlier on in the season. Leo Carlsson has definitely not had a very strong season, and Eklund has continued to have a pretty strong season for San Jose. So everything is, kind of now with the benefit of hindsight that we say now
Yep.
versus when they had to make the decision. But yeah, I'm curious your thoughts there. Mikhail Backlund in particular, we talk about having roles for some of these players. Like Mikhail Backlund can definitely play a fourth line role for a team and provide some pretty solid shutdown stuff at the very least in a fourth line role. So yeah, I'm curious your thoughts there. If you would have made any different decisions with this group.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece. Like, I think I would definitely take Leo Carlsson over William Eklund, even with the offensive skill that Eklund's providing. I think that Leo Carlsson, he's a bit better defensively. He has his chance to be better defensively. He's more all around. This is a guy that breaks the puck out. He's part of the breakout, whereas Eklund's kind of more he's off like red line in, right? He's a very offensive player, whereas Leo Carlsson can play all three zones. So I think that's what they're looking for there. But yeah, I'd take Backlund over Leo Carlsson. I just think if, again, a short tournament, you want a guy that's been there before, a guy that has leadership qualities, a great face-off guy, good penalty killer. So I think this is kind of a case of maybe what we wanted to see with, you and I were talking about potentially having Bedard with Team Canada, and we'll get in there when we talk about Canada. But yeah, Leo Carlsson, maybe they're just getting him in so he can play with the big dogs for a little bit, see what that feels like, and just kind of give him a little bit of an experience. Maybe he's kind of minimized a little bit in just very sheltered minutes.
Yeah, yeah, that could definitely be a possibility there. Um, then, they've had a couple injuries. William Carlson is not going to play. Ricard Raquel, with the season he's been having, was a pretty obvious choice to come in here. Yeah, Raquel's a guy that you feel pretty confident can play a lower role in the lineup as well, and you won't feel bad about having him out there. Jacob Markstrom in goal is out, and Samuel Urson is replacing him. Pretty straightforward selection there, but definitely not going to be the starter for Team Sweden. I think like if you're just kind of taking a step back here and evaluating the team as a whole, like definitely the top six here looks pretty strong. On the left wing, you got Philip Forsberg, probably Jesper Bratt goes over there. And then down the middle, you've got Zibanejad, Pettersson, Joel Eriksson Ek. That's pretty strong. And then on the right wing, you got Nylander, Kempe, Raymond. Like that's really strong. You got
Sheesh.
three pretty strong guys over there. So yeah, I don't think this team will hurt for scoring. I don't know that they've got any like super elites, the way that this USA and Canada can say. So that might be the one thing that could potentially hold them back. I would, I'd put Forsberg and Nylander up there against some of these other guys that we're going to talk about from the other two teams, but definitely they don't have quite the same, superstar power that USA and Canada have. But I don't think this is a team that's going to hurt for goals. And it also helps that they're going to have guys on the back end that can absolutely help out with that. Victor Hedman,
Yeah.
Rasmus Dahlin, Eric Carlson, like they have guys on the back end who can contribute offensively, and they have really good shutdown guys: Matthias Ekholm, Gustav Forsling, Jonas Brodin. I honestly think like this might be the best defensive group in the entire tournament, and I think that's pretty cool for Sweden and something they might be looking at here. And then in goal, it's going to be Linus Allmark and Philip Gustafsson. And then obviously Urson, as we mentioned. So yeah, I think it's a really strong team and one that could surprise. You got anything on this group? Where do you want to go with it? What's your most interesting part about the roster as constructed?
Yeah, I like what you're saying about sort of their defense being the major strength of this team, and I think that's absolutely right. That's how they're going to have to win, like as a full team, right? They don't have
Mhm.
game breakers. They don't have those type of players, but some of those game breakers, they're not the best defensively, right? Where as you look kind of down the middle here, Pettersson and Joel Eriksson Ek in particular, they're very good defensive centers. Pettersson doesn't get enough credit for that, but he's
Yeah.
excellent defensively. And then like I'm just looking at NHL.com here. They've got him with Forsberg and Raymond as a line potentially. What the hell? Like
Yeah.
Pettersson doesn't have to do a damn thing. Like just skate the puck in and pass off to one of these beauties. Like that, their top nine looks pretty savage to me. Like it looks
Yeah.
really good. And then yeah, like you said on the back end, they have the best collection of D men in my opinion in terms of pure offense. Like Hedman and Dahlin, who are also decent defensemen as well. And then like Forsling, Ekholm, Brodin. That's ridiculous, right? They got guys that can play in any situation. So, and then in goal, yeah, I love it. Allmark or Gustafson. Who do you think gets the start there?
Yeah, I think it'll be Gustafson just with the season he's had so far. Olmark has been banged up a little bit throughout the season. Yeah, that'd be my guess. But yeah, another spot where, you couldn't fault the coaches for going one way or the other, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really think this team has what it takes to be there in the end. I think like it's only 4 teams, so it's not like we're making these crazy hot takes. But I think
Yeah.
Sweden will probably be there in the end in that final game. I think that we talked about their coach as well, like that they should have some synergy, maybe a little quicker than the other teams. And then with this defensive acumen, I think it's going to equal some good things for this team.
All right, let's move over to the United States of America. Coaches here, Mike Sullivan. That might surprise some people. Obviously, the Penguins have not done so hot this year, but he's got enough history, I guess, that he gets the nod there. Tortorella, Jay Hines. Still can't remember this guy's first name.
Johnson,
And Johnson
Jack
Hines
Hines.
and David Quinn are also going to join Sullivan on the bench there. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to say? All NHL head coaches, at least in the past.
You
So,
could put you or I back there, and this team would probably still do pretty damn well. I mean,
yeah.
geez.
Yeah, definitely a solid group, but definitely when you get to the depth of talent that USA and Canada have, this is where some of the decisions really get put under a microscope
Mhm.
for a lot of people. So, yeah, let's just dig in. Vincent Trocheck, Brock Nelson, and Chris Kreider are on this team, and that means Cole Caulfield, Tage Thompson, Clayton Keller, Patrick Kane, Jason Robertson are all not on this team. Start us off there, Blake. Any really tough ones that you're like looking at right now, and you're like, man, that guy should not be on this team, and we should have somebody else here.
I mean, I think it's hindsight's 2020, but Chris Kreider, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? It's not the long neck contest. It's a tournament, okay? But I've said this many times. Kreider is playing injured this year. He's got a lingering back injury. He's not the same player right now. So yeah, that said, he's a good leader. He's done some good things with the Rangers. So I understand it. It's just when you got a guy like Tage Thompson there, or any of those players like Keller, Robertson, who's been playing lights out. Really, I think I saw someone said since the announcement for this team, he has 37 points in 31 games, right? The guy's going nuts. So there are a lot of better options, but I mean, Kreider does bring that great net front presence on the power play. If he does get out there with this group of killers, is he even on the power play, like on this team? I don't know. These teams are insane, but yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but obviously he plays with Trocheck and there's some chemistry there, and he'll be more of a glue guy. But I think Tage is really the one where I'm like, how did they not find a place for Tage Thompson in this lineup?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a tough one. Talk about it with Tolvanen, right? Like a guy that you want to have that one chance in a game to end a game or to put you up or tie a game or something. Like even if you're giving Tage Thompson 8 minutes a game, like if he's there in the slot, like he's got that shot, he's gonna make it happen, right? Yeah, are you really that confident in what Brock Nelson brings to the team? Like there are other guys who can play center. You have five legit centers here
Yep.
already, right? You have Matthews, Eichel, Jack Hughes, Dylan Larkin, Vincent Trocheck down the middle. What is Brock Nelson really bringing to this team where you couldn't add another game breaker like Tage Thompson is on the outside? Patrick Kane is an interesting snub just because of the history, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
the passing of the torch, if you will. I don't mind it. Like I think it's pretty clear that he's a tier below some of the talent that they have here, but I do think it's an interesting decision and kind of speaks to the mentality they've got. Like they're really trying to bring the players that they thought gave them the best chance, not leaning on past performance or seniority or anything here. So that's an interesting piece. Yeah, I mean Cole Caulfield, you could talk about him in the same category as Tage as being one guy you'd want to have that one chance that could influence your game or your tournament. Definitely a guy that, at his size, if he's not going to be there on power play units and he's not going to play on a top kind of line, does he really have like the energy kind of game that you want out of your fourth liner? I think that's probably why he gets left off this team. Same probably goes for Clayton Keller. Definitely think he could have had a role on this team, but is he really displacing any of the guys above him in a more, power play or, top line kind of role? Probably not. Jason Robertson, I think it's a left wing thing,
Yeah.
honestly, with Jason
It could be
Robertson.
positional.
Yeah, like obviously I would take him over Chris Kreider, but you're not taking him over Kyle Connor. You're not taking him over Jake Gensel, probably. You're not taking over Brady Tkachuk, especially at the time that they made this decision. And so, from that perspective, I can kind of see it. I would have taken him over Kreider even at the time of the announcement personally, just to yeah, we've seen him have a 100-point season in the NHL. Like, I think that speaks for itself and what he could do with a team like this. But yeah, definitely some interesting decisions and ones that'll be even more picked apart if this team doesn't live up to expectations for sure. Let's go to the back end. John Carlson, Jake Sanderson were left off this team, whereas Jacob Slavin, Brock Faber, Noah Hannafin were brought along on this team.
Mhm.
Hannafin, obviously another player who's not had the greatest season, and so this decision looks a lot worse in hindsight. But even at the time, like, I don't know, I feel like there's probably some other players that you could have gone with here. What do you think about that specifically? Would you have taken Carlson or Sanderson over Slavin, Faber, Hannafin?
Yeah, I definitely would have taken Sanderson over Hannafin. I think just the way he's been playing as of late. Like I think they have guys that do what Hannafin does, but better. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And Slavin, I think his inclusion here is just his defensive prowess, right? This guy blocks shots. He's a glue guy. He's kind of like a Chris Tanev type player. And then now, like, it's Quinn Hughes is not playing this tournament, which really, really stinks. So now we
Mm-hmm.
do get Jake Sanderson, right? Jake Sanderson's the
Yeah.
guy who's stepping in. So that makes a lot of sense, but that's a huge blow for the States, isn't it? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Hughes is all world. This guy is top 2 defenseman in the league. And look at this group of killers that he would have been able to play with. I mean, my mouth is watering just thinking about that randomly. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Hannafin was the one where it didn't make a lot of sense to me. The other ones I can justify, but I don't know. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think so. I would have liked to see that happen. I mean, Brock Faber, he doesn't have good underlying stats on the season.
Mhm.
Like, I know he's playing a ridiculous amount of minutes and he's being asked to do everything for Minnesota, but like, he's got a 46% Corsi for percentage and a 46% on ice scoring chance for percentage on the season at 5v5. Yeah, I feel like you probably could have gotten that plus a little more juice
Yep.
from somewhere else. So even if you're expecting Noah Hannafin to be a little bit more of how he ended the previous season and not how he's played this season, I still think that Brock Faber is not necessarily a guy that you had to have on this squad. Um, but yeah, I mean, you are kind of splitting hairs a little bit. In hindsight, John Carlson is having a 54% Corsi for percentage and on high scoring chance for percentage season for Washington, and so that looks pretty hot at this point in time. But he definitely had looked like he was taking a step back in the kind of the 2 years prior to this year and the resurgence of the Capitals this year. So I can understand it at the time the decision was made.
Buddy,
And
who
goal,
takes
you've
who takes power play one there? Is it?
yes,
It's
this
gonna be.
is
It's
pretty
gonna be
interesting.
ZW, right? It's got to be. But I mean, you got Adam Fox.
Yeah.
Like I think it's probably one of them. But I think you got to go Wierenski there, don't you?
I feel like you should go Rensky, but I feel like I may have a little bit of bias on that particular question. Yeah, just with the season he's having, like,
Oh,
how do
unbelievable.
how do you not, in my opinion? I mean, Fox as a distributor, as a pure distributor, if you're looking for somebody to, set up Matthews to set up Connor, like, yeah, I
He
can
does
see
that.
the logic there, right? It kind of depends, I guess, on the flavor of defenseman maybe that you want on the back end of the power play, but both are obviously very good options there, even with Quinn Hughes out of the picture. But yeah, I feel like Matthews, Eichel, Jack Hughes, like, how are you keeping any of those three centers off the top power play? And then, yeah, like, take your pick. If you want Brady Tkachuk to, run amok in the blue paint, like, you can bring him on that top power play unit.
Yep.
How do you leave Kyle Connor off with the season he's having and his ability to just pound home those shots from that side? Interestingly, right? Like, that's the same side that Matthews is on for his one timers. So, you're making a decision as to who you're playing there. I think Matthews is maybe a little bit more multifaceted. The Leafs have moved him around their power play structure a lot more in the past. And so I do think that Matthews could move around a little bit more for them. And I mean, he's got 7 assists in his last 5 games here for
Yeah.
the Leafs.
He
So
does that. He's a good
maybe
distributor. Underrated.
yeah. Yeah, he definitely could play a little bit of a different role and just kind of accommodate his teammates a little bit more in this particular instance. I mean, Jake Gensel has made a living off of playing alongside really terrific players, so I could see him being an interesting choice. Play a bumper role maybe if some of the other guys don't really like that role. Matthew Kachuk, like, how do you leave
Even
either
just
Kachuk,
going down the roster
right?
is insane.
JT Miller.
Yeah, he's an amazing power play performer. Like, the more we talk about this, like, the more I think it's going to be Adam Fox. Like,
Hmm,
Werenski is a shooter from the back end. He's like in Columbus, he does everything, right? He's required to
yeah.
do everything, and that's how he's getting this success. Whereas, yeah, I like, you're not going to be taking low percentage shots from the point, Zach Werenski. No, you're going to give it down to Matthews. You're going to give it down to Jack Hughes. You're going to give it to all these guys, right? So
Yeah.
I bet it is Fox that takes power play 1 and Werenski heads up power play 2.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. In goal, you got Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Jeremy Swayman. I think Hellebuck has the kind of seniority here, and obviously the track record over the last number of years speaks for itself. Hellebuck is definitely going to be the starter here. I don't think there's going to be any question from anybody on that. And obviously that makes them pretty stalwart in goal. Even if they had 2 injuries here, they'd
Yeah.
still have one of the better goalies probably. I mean, Swayman hasn't been great this year, but could he be hot for 4 games? We've seen it before,
Highest
especially as
goalie
Soo
Nate's
fans.
drafted in years. That's what he thinks about Jeremy Swayman, folks.
Yep, that's what I think about him for sure. All right, let's head over to Canada, another team that's
Oh
got a
yeah,
lot of
let's go, baby.
interesting stuff. Coaches here: John Cooper, Bruce Cassidy, Pete DeBoer, Rick Tocchet. Again, who's who list of names here as far as the coaches go. John Cooper, yeah, I've just heard tremendous stuff about John Cooper as an individual, and arguably Tampa's got the worst roster it's had in the last decade, maybe, and they're still, right there with everybody else. Um, so yeah, I think that John Cooper absolutely deserves this. I actually heard a pretty interesting story about the Team Canada women's team. John Cooper came to speak to them, and like the Team Canada, the women were just like in awe of John Cooper. Like they thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then they're like just like following him around the whole time, like trying to learn from him because he was just so good.
Seems like
And
a beauty. Seems like an
yeah,
absolute beauty in his post game interviews too. Like
yeah,
it's a nice piece of stark difference from the U.S. coaches. Hey, like you got Jay Hines, a very grumpy man. You got
yeah,
Torts.
towards yeah,
Sullivan. He seems like a nice guy, but still a little salty. I don't know.
yeah.
This is the feel good team right here.
I don't know. I think Cassidy's got a little bit of the grump to him, so
Yeah,
I
he's a
think
bit of
we
a
got
grump.
something
Fair,
there.
yeah.
Either way, this is definitely going to be an interesting team with some very interesting decisions, especially up front. I think, well, I mean, there's decisions everywhere that we can pick apart here for sure, but there's a laundry list of players that got left off this team. Zach Hyman, John Tavares, Mark Scheifele with the season he's had, Tom Wilson with the season he's had and the role he could play, Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini as like the new guard coming in for Canada. Did you want to bring them along? We talked about the way that Sweden brought Leo Carlson. You could see that for either of those two. But instead, we get Anthony Cirelli, Brandon Hagel, Sam Bennett, Seth Jarvis on this squad instead. So, talk to me about the forward decisions that were made here, and if there's any that you think are egregious.
Yeah, nothing egregious, but I mean, egregious. That's how I say it, Nate. All right, don't
Okay.
don't laugh me out of here. All right, we'll just edit it in post. Um, yeah, Sam Bennett is a little bit of a head scratcher. I know you got some thoughts on that. To me, I feel like it's going to be one of those decisions that's either looks like genius or at the end of it you're like, what were they doing, right? Because Bennett
Mm-hmm.
really is a guy that's proven he can elevate his play when it matters, and I'm kind of excited to watch him in this environment, right? And that's a guy that can absolutely slide into a third or fourth line role with this team, no questions asked. Right. It's not like putting Tage Thompson on the fourth line. It's Sam
Mm-hmm.
Bennett, right? He does that. Sam Bennett Dyson. He's going to go out and beef the hell out of people. So, that's one I think they could have went, maybe a different way, right? Like leaving guys like Bedard off, which we talked about, or John Tavares even, I think would yeah, that's a guy I'd like to see on this team. You know what I mean? But yeah, Bennett, I actually like the additions of Anthony Cirelli. And Brandon Hagel, Travis Konechny, those all make sense. Seth Jarvis, like those are glue kind of guys that play in all three zones. And I think that's why a guy like Mark Scheifele gets left off the list, right? Amazing offensively, not so amazing defensively. And if you look at this team up front, they don't need offense. Hey, they need guys that can, they need a bit of a shutdown third line, guys that they can put out there in defensive minutes, and Scheifele ain't it. And I think, guys like Hyman as well, like they ain't it. They don't do that, right? So I think there was some real thought put into this decision here. Bennett being the one where I'm like, okay, let's see what happens, but I'm pretty on board with the others.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of John Cooper making some decisions at play here for sure, right? Like you get Sorelli and Hagel, which are his two guys
Yeah.
from Tampa, and then you get Bennett here, who he's played against in the last couple of playoffs, I think, right? I think Tampa and Florida have played in each of the last two playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously within the division there, he's seen a lot of Bennett, so there's something there I think that he wants on this squad. I'm just not a fan of Bennett, the person, the hockey player. Like he's pretty dirty. Like
What did he do to you, Nate? Come on.
when Brad Marchand is saying that you're just a really dirty player, like there's probably something to that. So,
Yeah, okay, fair.
um,
That's fair.
yeah, I just don't know if it's like a great look for Canada in general in that regard. And I just feel like he is like an energy guy. I get that aspect of it, but he's not like a defensive specialist. Like he's not like necessarily a guy that tilts play. He takes a lot of shots, but a lot of them are low percentages. He's never been an efficient player really at any point in his career. And so like what are you getting from Bennett that you couldn't also get from Tom Wilson, who, actually does a little bit more. In my opinion, like there are just a few different ways that you could have gone with a similar brand of player. Like Tom Wilson kills penalties too. You give yourself another option in that regard. I just think that there are probably some better options. Honestly, what I would have liked to see, I really think that they missed the boat not having Bedard on this team at least, and maybe Celebrini as well. Like, how are you losing when those guys are on the ice playing with really skilled players? I just don't see it, to be honest with you. I know they're young. I know that you're like worried about them making a mistake or something in a crucial situation. I just don't see it. I don't. These guys are number one overall picks in the NHL. They're built for stuff like this. They've all played these World Juniors tournaments and absolutely shown out at the highest levels already. Like I just don't think the moment's too big for these kids. So I would have liked to see those two guys on this squad somehow. I really don't mind, Sorelli and Hagel together. Like they penalty kill together for Tampa. Like I assume they'll probably do the same thing here, keep the other guys fresh for their other roles. And so I do kind of understand that one. I like Seth Jarvis. Like I just think Seth Jarvis is an absolute beauty on and off the ice. So I find it hard to hate on the pick, even though, in if I'm just using my analytical mind, I'd rather see Bedard or Celebrini in that spot. But I do find it hard to hate on the pick just because I love the guy so much. So that's my take on the forwards. Yeah, you can obviously make huge arguments for any of the other guys we mentioned as well. Shifley, with the year he's having, I'm probably high among that list as well. On defense, I think this is also a pretty interesting group that they ended up with. Pietrangelo was on this team. Obviously, he's not going to play in this tournament. He's going to take some time off and try to get better. He's been playing through something. And Doughty is confirmed as the replacement. Drew Doughty is going to play. I think that's a bit of a shot. Like it's a bit of a nod to Doughty and what he's done for Team Canada, and played on some really great teams in the past. I don't honestly know if he's the best decision at this point in time. He's only played a few games coming back from his long-term injury, so that's definitely up for debate. They take Devin Taves just basically because he plays with Kel McCarr, I'm assuming. I'm no slight to Taves. Like obviously he's a terrific top pair defenseman in the National Hockey League, but yeah, there's a long list of guys who could have been there. Colton Parayko, Travis Sanheim in this as well, and you're leaving off Mackenzie Weegar, you're leaving off Dougie Hamilton, you're leaving off Evan Bouchard, and you're leaving off Noah Dobson, who obviously now would have been injured, but at the time that they made the decision, that was a bit more of a decision. So yeah, talk to me about the defense here. Are there any other decisions that you would have made with this group?
It's interesting. Obviously, they're going with kind of the one offensive, one defensive kind of situation with their pairs, right? So I don't mind that. I like Colton Parayko there. That guy's having an amazing year. I think that's a guy you need to hold down his offensive partner, whoever he's playing with. Shea Theodore is an interesting one to me. Obviously, we like Shea Theodore over here, but Shea Theodore or Evan Bouchard, like who they are similar players, and I think I like Evan Bouchard better. In terms of what they bring to the table, like they're a similar style of player, at least offensive defenseman. And I'm not sure the handedness of those players, like maybe that plays a factor there as well. But I think I would have liked to have seen Evan Bouchard in here. I think that's a bit of a whiff there. But where does he slot in, right? Like you don't take Josh Morrissey off this squad. And that's really, I think that Taves, Parayko, and Sanheim are all probably needed to kind of create that cohesion with that pairing. So that's where I'm at with Theodore. It's like, yeah, I like Shea Theodore, but I like Evan Bouchard better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that argument for sure. I think honestly, it might be a little bit of the case where you see those controller disconnected moments for Evan Bouchard,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
coaches are like,
What are
"I
you
just can't
doing?
have that in a 4-game tournament." If it was for your hockey team or your fantasy hockey team over the course of 82 games, yeah, you're probably taking Bouchard. But in a 4-game tournament where you got to win every single shift, yeah, maybe that's why you see Theodore over a Bouchard. Yeah, definitely both good choices there. Another thing, I guess, as well, like Kale McCarr is on this top power play unit pretty obviously, and so if Bouchard is not there to run a top power play, like that takes away like a pretty solid chunk of what he's best at as well. So there is that to it as well. I think Theodore is an underrated 5v5 player as well. So
Love
I
that.
I like that there. And I think there's probably the thought that he could play with Pietrangelo and kind of have, that cohesion. You have the Taves Makar, you have the Theodore Pietrangelo, you kind of have some, that 1-2 punch, guys that know each other already playing together maybe. I think that was at least possibly part of the decision making process on those two specifically. Dougie Hamilton is another guy who provides a lot of shots, like tilts the ice. The metrics always look good for Dougie Hamilton. I think you can make an argument for him in the Pietrangelo Parayko range that he could have been there. Again, a guy that, if he's not on a top power play, you're taking away a good chunk of what's best about his game. And
Yep.
so I can understand a little bit from that perspective. Mackenzie Weegar, another one where you wonder if he could have brought something different to this squad, like the absolute hammer that he is, blocking shots and hitting people, and just providing something a little different that you might not be getting from some of these other defensemen that are on here. It's
Yep.
worth noting, like Mackenzie Weegar has a 55% Corsi 4 percentage on Calgary at 5v5. I don't think that should go unnoticed. That's a really, really good number. To me, Mackenzie Weegar is actually the biggest snub, I think, on this squad. I would have preferred to see him over a number of these other guys. You can take that for what it's worth. I was hoping that Uyghur would be the guy instead of Doughty that got named as the replacement for Pietrangelo personally, but we will see if Doughty can turn things around and be a big part of this squad moving forward. And then we move on to goal here, Blake, and these are some decisions that are looking pretty bad in hindsight right now. We'll obviously see after the tournament if they if these goaltenders fail, it will be an unending source of topic for Sportsnet and TSN and all these sports networks up here in Canada for sure, because we have Aiden Hill, Jordan Binnington, and Sam Montembeault. That means we leave off Logan Thompson, Darcy Kemper, Mackenzie Blackwood. Again, a spot where, if you're making this decision not back when they had to make it, but you're making it today, it's a pretty obvious decision against a lot of these players. But that's kind of the nature of goaltending as well. So do you think that they should have seen this coming, or do you think they should have made decisions differently back then?
It didn't make sense back then. I mean, Montembeault was playing well, sure, but it's not like he's been doing that for years. Like, he had a good stretch of hockey for a pretty bad team. He's playing lights out, catching bullets in his teeth. Well, that fell off, right, as
Yeah.
expected. And it's I'd love to hear the rationale there. Like, maybe like there's something we don't know about, kind of just what he brings to the dressing room, like what his preparation is like. What are the pros say? Like, actual analysts that are in there in the dressing room, watching these guys. So not watching them in the dressing room. That sounds a little weird. Could I get that job? Is that a job? Because if so, I'll do it for free. Okay. I know I'm going with that. You ever play, like, do you have guys you play hockey with, Nate, that straight up like strip down naked and then they're trying to have a full on conversation with you?
Oh yeah,
You're
I
like, buddy,
distinctly
first off, put your
remember.
leg down. It's on the
Yeah.
bench. Like, put that down. I'm
Yes.
staring directly at your penis. I don't need that. All right.
I had that exact experience. I was like probably like 19 years old and I was playing in a beer league and having a conversation with like a 55-year-old guy, and he did that whole thing, like puts the leg up, starts toweling himself off like 6 inches
Yeah,
from
he's
my
like
face. I'm
flossing.
like,
Like,
oh my.
guy.
Yeah, that's definitely a possible a
Uh,
possible side effect of
yeah, I
playing
heard.
beer
Yeah,
hockey.
I have heard that Montembeau. That's kind of his shtick. So I don't know. That's that we haven't confirmed that, but
Unconfirmed.
I'm putting that out there. The man flosses butt naked. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, yeah, it didn't make sense to me back then. Let's get back to goalies. Like a guy like Mackenzie Blackwood. I remember talking to Kevin Woodley like way back when Blackwood was playing for San Jose, and he was saying that it wouldn't surprise him if Blackwood was the starter for this tournament and even for the Olympics moving forward. He liked him that much, even when he was
Mhm.
on San Jose. And yeah, that seems like a pretty big omission to me. And then obviously Logan Thompson. I mean, again, hindsight 2020, but this guy's been nuclear this year. He's been playing
Mhm.
bonkers on a great team. I've heard some rumblings, and this is all rumors. This is unsubstantiated, but there's maybe some dressing room stuff there with Logan Thompson that was potentially the issue. But
Mhm.
I don't know. Is that it? Like, do you want to win games or not? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like any player that shows up to play Team Canada and they can't put that aside to
Yeah,
play for
they're
Team
good to go.
Canada, like, I don't think that's going to be an issue in a spot like this. But yeah, definitely could have been a bit of a factor there. The other big question mark that's still ongoing as of the time that we're recording this is that Sidney Crosby is like going to go and practice, but like they don't have to make a decision. I think it's 5 p.m. on Monday, Monday the 10th here, that they have to officially make a decision. And so Crosby's gonna like go practice with the team and then decide, I guess, if he's gonna play. So it's kind of a pretty weird spot there. But yeah, that's obviously like it's the captain of Team Canada and the most storied guy, the guy who scored the golden goal that everybody remembers. Like it's the guy for Team Canada, and so that would be a huge storyline if he can't play in this tournament. All right. Well, before we get into the last bit here, we're going to have just a little bit of fun, tier some position groups, make some predictions, and we'll see how that goes. But just wanted to give kind of a quick update on what we're going to be doing here. So I'm doing the Puzzling Players show, 8 p.m. EST, as I always do. That's going to be here on Monday, February 10th, 8 p.m. EST. Come join live on YouTube. Ask all your questions. Let's talk about some puzzling players and get ourselves set for when the NHL does come back. Right after that, for patrons, supporter tier and above, and basically everybody who's a patron on the Apples and Gems Patreon will get the patron live show. I'm going to run through all 32 NHL teams, kind of give an update on where I see lines, power play units, goaltending situations, where I see that going over the last little bit of the season here as we get into fantasy playoffs. So I think that'll be really helpful for some people. So if you have been pondering whether to, hit that $2 a month and get in, I think that'll be well worth your $2 to get in for that one. And then Blake, we're talking about this. We want to do a live stream.
Oh
We're
yeah.
talking about doing a live stream Saturday for the USA Canada game. We'll just basically like show up on YouTube. Maybe we'll
Half
invite some
cut.
friends. Yeah, we'll invite some friends. Obviously, we won't be able to like live stream the game. You can't really do that on YouTube. They'll take you down pretty quick. But we'll have ourselves talking on here. So if you want to have us providing half baked commentary in the background while you watch the
Full
game.
baked.
Full baked commentary as per Blake in the background while you're watching the game, then yeah, come on and join us. We'll do some stuff like that. So I think you should expect that for the Saturday upcoming USA Canada game. All right, Blake, are you ready to get into some tiering?
I'm ready, buddy. Let's get the biz.
All right. So basically, what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna like drag it over from the tier maker thing, put it on the screen here. But we're gonna go through basically coaches, forwards, defense, goalies. We're going to tier these teams up. So where we think these guys all fit, where we basically we're going to try to figure out what teams are the best at what positions and contrast and compare here. So I'll bring this over. We've got the tier list here. S tier, obviously the best tier, A, B, C. I think it's pretty straightforward what we're doing here. So let's start with the coaching here, Blake. We'll just kind of go left to right here. Sweden's first up. We've got Sam Hallam and Daniel Alfredson behind the bench over there. Where would you place Team Sweden?
It's hard because we don't know really, but I do like the narrative that we talked about. I want to go 2, but I think because of the unknown, I think we got to go 3. I don't know. I'm
B
probably going
tier?
3 there. Yeah, B tier. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree it's between A and B, but it is so much of an unknown that I think it is valid to really question where it should be going. So I think that's a valid concern. We'll put them in B tier, but definitely think that if you're moving them from B tier, I would go up rather than down. The States are up next. I think Mike Sullivan being the head coach, I think is going to give some people some pause, and myself included. Like
Mhm.
I feel like there's been definitely blame to be had with the team that's been assembled, but also it feels like Mike Sullivan hasn't always gotten the best out of this group in the last
Mhm.
2-3 years. So I don't know, and obviously there's a huge contingent of NHL caliber head coaches behind him, so definitely like the retinue is all there. But do you trust Mike Sullivan as the guy enough to put USA in the S tier?
No, I don't. They're definitely not in the S tier. And they got Tortorella as well. It's like, I just read something, and again, like I'm gonna paraphrase this, but it was like he was voted the coach that most players didn't want to play for. Right? They did
Mm-hmm.
a survey of players, like, and Tortorella was there. So, and he's there. He's a vibe killer, but I don't know. He donates to animal charity. So, love you, Torts. You got to go A tier. I think it makes sense here. They're not up at the S tier yet. And plus, they got Jay Hines. I mean, that salty old barnacle. Yeah, they're going to be reliant more on their players on the ice rather than coaching, in my opinion.
All right. Moving on to Canada. I don't know if you're going to debate me on this, but I
No,
would put Canada in the S tier. John Cooper, as I
Rick
previously
Tocchet.
mentioned.
All right, come
Yeah,
on.
we got all the guys here, and I'm pretty confident that that's about as good as it gets in terms of coaching. Finland, I think you're between B and C tier here. It could be better than we're expecting, but it's just such an unknown name. I don't know really where to go with it. What would you go?
Yeah, no Ole Jokinen. We're going down to the C tier. All right,
All right.
that's a
That's
fact.
confirmed. All right. So I'm going to grab a screen grab here and I'm going to throw it in the show sheet for anybody who's going to be interested in this after the fact. But then we'll move on. We'll reset and we'll do the forwards here. So let me do this. We'll delete the row. We've got everything back. How do I add a row? Add a row below.
Geez, I'm so glad you do this live because yeah, for me, I'm just I don't even know what's going on right now, but I thank you for your service, Nate.
Well, I'm trying. We're getting it done here. I think we're content with the S A B C tier. I don't think we need any more than that.
I
So
feel
we're
good
doing
about this.
forwards now. Sweden's up here first as it's constructed right now. Where do you see this forward group from Sweden in terms of the forwards? Where would you have them ranked?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy B tier for
Okay.
this. Like I don't know if you're gonna fight me on that, but yeah, just like we said, they don't have the game breakers, but they're definitely more than one other team here, or better than one of the other teams here.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that they could have an argument for A tier. You know what, to be honest, I would challenge that. I think I would probably put them A tier. I think Forsberg, Nylander, as I mentioned, are enough. They got Kempe,
My
they got Brat,
over who?
they got Raymond.
Over. All right. Well,
I'm
let's
not I'm
yeah.
not
Okay,
saying
this is
I'm not
interesting.
saying necessarily even over somebody, right? Like we could have two people in the same tier,
Okay.
two teams in
Okay.
the
I
same
thought it
tier.
was all the same. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All
No, I
right.
was thinking we could put them in the same tiers. I think I would still have them in A
Okay, yeah,
tier
you
personally.
do that, buddy. You bump them up. I feel good. I feel
All
good
right.
about this. You feeling good? Okay.
I'm feeling good.
All right, that's nice.
Finland here. Where are we placing Finland?
Mm,
Obviously, the headliners we talked about: Aho, Barkov. You got Rupe Hintz. You got Patrick
yep.
Laine. You got Mikko Rantanen. Those are the headliners for sure on this squad. We talked about some of the lower end guys. Definitely not the depth that some of the other teams here have. But are they B tier? Are they C tier? Are they two spots below Sweden, or are they only one?
Yeah, I think we got to go B tier then. If Sweden's up at A tier, like this is still a very good forward group, and like we talked about, I think they're constructed in a very intentional way, right? They don't have the game breakers or that real depth in their bottom six the way the other teams do, but their top six is still pretty damn good.
Yep, I like that. Canada, I don't think I'm going to get any debate from you here, but I think we're going to go S tier. I think the
Top
states we're
line, my
gonna,
God.
I think we're gonna feel the same.
I
States
can't
go
wait
S
to
tier
watch
as
that
well.
game. Oh yeah, my
Yeah,
goodness. That's gonna be so exciting. Imagine if it's just some slog fest, like a
yeah,
one nothing.
one
You'd be like,
nothing.
what are we doing in the shootout? You're like, buddy, please. Actually,
Yeah.
what are they doing? Do you know? Are they doing a continuous overtime? They'll do that, right? Because the team
Uh,
has to win, or maybe during the round robin. I don't know. I gotta look into that.
that's a good question, actually. I like typically international goes with a shootout of some description.
I'll see if I
So
can
I would
find it for you.
assume at least for the round robin they'd run a shootout, but I don't actually know that for a fact. Would be pretty interesting. I think if I remember correctly, like when Crosby scored the overtime winner, I think it was 5v5, like 20-minute overtime periods. I think they weren't going to do a shootout in that gold medal game, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to think through what that might look like.
Okay, here we go.
Um,
I got it. All 7 games in the Four Nations face-off will be played by NHL rules, except for overtime, which will be 10 minutes instead of 5 for round robin games. And then
okay,
so we have to figure out what happens. I guess it'll just be continuous overtime,
gotcha.
for that final game. Oh man, I'm actually starting to get kind of jacked up about this. This is going to be some fun hockey to watch.
For sure. Okay, let's move on to defense here. Canada's first up. We talked about the defense group for Canada. Definitely some interesting names, but I mean, you got Makar at the top, you got Taves to play there with them, and then everybody else kind of has their pretty obvious roles: Doughty, Morrissey, Pareko, Sanheim, Theodore. Where would you put the Team Canada defense core?
It's hard to put them below the top tier because they have Kale McCarr. But I
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like, if we're looking at it holistically as a whole, as all four teams, I think they're not quite at the top tier to me. So they're probably A
Yeah,
tier. I think that's probably where they live.
I think that's where I would put them as well. Yep, I'm comfortable with A tier there. Let's move over to Finland. As you mentioned, no real headliner here after Heiskanen goes down. That's going to hurt them for sure. For me, it'd be C tier. Would you
Yeah.
put them any higher?
No, it's gonna be rough going. Imagine though somebody comes out of this like just as an absolute stud. Like that would be
Yeah.
exciting. A guy like you look at this lineup here. One of these guys is going to have to take the reins offensively, and I'm interested to see if
Hmm.
someone can do that. And I like Yusuf Alamaki. He gets no love in Utah here, and I wonder if he sees another role here. Essa Lindell's a stud. I do like him, but offensively, I don't know.
Right. Sweden for me is S tier. We talked about
Got to
it.
be
Hedman, you got Dahlin, you
it's
got the shutdown
perfect.
guy in Forsling, you got the other shutdown guy in Ekholm. Yeah, to me, this is a perfectly constructed defense core. All right, last up, the defense for the United States. Even without Quinn Hughes, you still got
Yeah.
Wierenski, Slavin, Sanderson, McAvoy, Fox, Faber, Hannafin. Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at top end defensemen, Fox, McAvoy, and Wierenski, like those will stack up against any three that you can put out there. Do you think that they can contend with what we talked about with Sweden, or are they more in line with what Canada's got on
Ooh,
paper?
they're kind of in between. It's weird. Like with Quinn Hughes, they're S tier, no question to me.
Right.
But yeah, I would say let's go A tier. They're at the top of the A tier. I would put them like
Hmm.
1A over Canada, in my opinion. I
All
think
right, we'll
that,
put
yeah,
them first in the
there you go.
order.
I like that.
All right. Well, we've got it here.
We feel good about this.
Moving through, we've got the defense, and last up, we've got goalies. And you know how much I love to make predictions about goaltenders, so that's exactly what we're gonna do
Oh,
here.
here we go.
Um, while I'm doing this, I think that I think that like I feel like this could have been so different for Canada.
Yeah,
Right? We could be talking about this in such a different
as a
light right now.
strength as
And
opposed
it's
to yeah,
yeah, it's pretty disappointing. So for me, if we're going Canada first year, I would put Canada in the C tier. I don't
yeah.
think you can go higher.
It stinks. They might have the worst goalies in the tournament. That's weird to say when you got such strength at the position.
Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of suck, but it is what it is. Over to Finland, we talked about like, Saros hasn't been the greatest and he is like the presumptive starter. They may or may not do that, but the presumptive starter there, Lankinen, Luukkonen behind him. Do you think that with the the potential of Saros being the starter and how he's played for Nashville this year, do you think that Finland deserves A tier or would you bump them down to B?
I think I'd have them at B because I honestly I'm not really I haven't been stoked on Saros this year, and I know Nashville's been a bit of a train wreck so far, but yeah, that he's a part of that, and I'm not sure what his vibe is going into this tournament. I don't know if there's injuries, like, and then who's next up? It is probably going to be Lankinen, and if Lankinen's your starting goalie going into a world tournament, it's not a great look, you know what I mean? And I love Kevin Lankinen, but yeah, I think that kind of keeps them at the B tier for me.
Fair enough. Over to Sweden. As we mentioned, Philip Gustafsson, Linus Allmark, and Samuel Ersson as the replacement for Markstrom there. Would you feel comfortable with Sweden above Finland in the A tier, or are they more in line with Finland there?
I think I liked him in the A tier there. I think that makes sense to me. Obviously, Gustafson depends on which Gus shows up. He's even done it this year. He's having a great year, but every now and then he can throw up a touchdown. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, buddy, please. But I think Linus Allmark is about as consistent as it gets, and either one of those would be happy to have.
All right. And last up, we have the United States. We talked about it. Connor
Yeah,
Hellebuck. Yeah, even if he went down, you got Ottinger behind him and you got Swayman behind him. You got
wagon.
options and you got the best goalie in the world right now. So I think comfortably S tier for me. I assume the same for you, Blake.
Yep, absolutely. What round do you draft Connor Hellebuck in? Do you think in draft season?
For fantasy drafts, I've never had to make that decision because he's always gone so far
I don't know.
before
If he
me.
if he gets down to the 12th round, I'm taking a flyer. What do you think?
In the 12th round, I think you could take that flyer, Blake.
All
I
right,
think that's
sweet. I
okay.
might do that. I might do that next year.
All right. Well, after it all, I'm trying to just like mentally kind of sum things up. So we said like coaches and forwards, Canada has two S tiers there. They got the A tier for the defensemen, but C tier for the goalies. The United States is S tier for goalies, A tier for defense, S tier for forwards, and A tier for coaches. Sweden goes B tier for coaches, A tier for forwards, S tier for defense, and A tier for goalies. And then Finland goes B tier for goalies, C tier for defense, B tier for forwards, and C tier for the coaches. So, to
That's
my
cool.
mind, that leaves us with I think the States look like the best team on paper. I think, as you mentioned, Sweden with the defense that they have, if one of their goalies gets hot, if we get, like start of the season Gustafson where nobody could beat him, if he comes to play behind that defense, then they could really cause some problems for any team on any given night. So I think Sweden is comfortably in the conversation. Canada with the firepower up front, obviously they could uh, yeah, they could be the
Yep.
team that puts up a touchdown on Gustafsson, and that
Yep.
wouldn't surprise anybody. Finland seems to be kind of in a tier of their own back from the other three, and then I think most people would also have Sweden tier back from USA and Canada. I don't know if that's necessarily warranted or not, but that's the kind of been the prevailing sentiment I've been hearing about it. With all that in mind, Blake, we got to make some predictions now about what we think is going to happen, and we'll throw in the most valuable player as well at the end of it. So take it away. You got the floor. Let's go fourth place all the way through first.
Okay. So yeah, fourth place. I am. It's not a hot take. I'm putting Finland there. I think because there's only four teams, it's such a small tournament. Anybody can win. There's no question there. Anybody can get hot. Like Finland's not like going to get steamrolled, I don't think. But I just when you look at the rosters and all the strengths of the other teams, I think Finland's going to come up short. So fourth for Finland. To me, and this stings, but I think that Canada is probably going to be third. And I just think it's the goalies. Like that's really going to be, it's going to be a problem. I think that you can't. like Bennington, Hill, who's not playing well right now, and Bennington, okay, but that's those are your 1-2. Like, damn, no, oh my god, that stinks. That's hurtful. But that first line, oh man, I really, really hope Crosby is able to get through a game here, and we can see Crosby, McKinnon, and McDavid. Dear God, I mean, is the other team going to touch the puck? I don't even know. So yeah, but I put them at third. Second, I'm going to go Sweden, and we talked about why we think Sweden is good. Me personally, I do think that they are clearly the best defensive team. I love their defense core, and just from my own anecdotal experience of playing hockey, when you've got great guys on the back end, like zipping pucks up to you and making a bunch of stops, like it's going to be a net positive for the whole team. So I like Sweden to be there in the end, but US is really going to be the one that they're just the team to beat to me. Like, doesn't matter if they played poorly defensively. They got so many studs up front. It's unreal. And they got Connor Hellebuck on the back end. Like, it's just crazy. They have strengths everywhere that it matters to me. So, yeah, I like U.S. to win here. I hate to say it. I'm cheering for Canada, though, folks.
All right. And round it out. So I assume you're going with an MVP from the USA then?
Yep. I'll take for my MVP, I'm going to go Jack Eichel. I think that it's a little bit of a dark horse pick, but Eichel's been lights out this season, and he's really, it feels like he's just getting better here, even in the last few games. The guy's electric out there, and he's got just a unbelievable group of players that he gets to play with. Like, first off, who do you think Jack Eichel lines up with? Like, who's he going to play with?
Yeah, it's definitely
Like,
hard to say. Like
Matt Tkachuk or Jack Hughes. I mean, like, what?
Yeah, it feels like Hughes probably gets moved to the wing, right? And Matthews and Eichel are the 1-2 down the middle. But yeah, I mean, you could see, like, do they try to recreate a little bit of what they've had with like Barbashev and Stone being his most common line mates this year? Do they try to, put a little bit of a banger on one side, maybe a Brady Tkachuk on one side? Maybe they go
For
Brady and
Miller?
Matthew on either side of Eichel. Like, I could see that. That could be
Oh
fun.
my God.
Yeah, there's
That's
a lot of ways that they could skin this cat for sure.
strangely aroused. But yeah, that's where I'm going there. I like Jack Eichel as the MVP. What say you, Nathaniel?
All right, so my fourth is going to be Finland as well. I think they are just kind of clearly a tier below. And yeah, could they surprise us? Yes. Do we think they will? Most likely, no. So that's where I'm at. I do think Sweden falls short in the end. I just think that the line after line, 1 through 4 dominance of USA and Canada will come to bear at some point. But yeah, I do think Sweden is a lot more likely to topple one of the two than Finland, so I'll put them in third here. USA is going to be second, and that means I've
Oh, I
got
love
Canada in
this.
first.
Let's
Blake,
go.
I cannot believe that you would go against your home country, and I will not stand for such a thing. Let it be known that Naker Niblink of the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast supports the Canadian brothers in arms that are going to go then and play this game.
I'm so ashamed. I don't know. I've never felt this much shame before, but it's really hitting home.
Yeah, and for my MVP, it's obviously going to be a bit chalky, but Connor McDavid, I just think like Connor McDavid, it feels like is one of these guys who's fueled by like being the best right now and like
Yeah.
wants to write his name in history at this point. Like he's got all the individual scoring titles. He wants the team things. He wants the Olympics. He wants the Stanley Cup. This is what he's after now. I think he ratchets this thing up another level in this tournament. I think he puts on an absolute show. I think he scores 2 points a game, and he's the clear MVP in this one.
I'm here for it, buddy. Let's go.
All right. Well, we made it to the end, Blake. So that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value and helped you get a little bit better at understanding the Four Nations tournament today.
4 nations.
All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. And that's it, folks. Much love.